So in the last video, we left off at a press conference in Helsinki between the greatest president in my lifetime and Vladimir Putin. I left a couple of little clues at the end of that maybe the reason that the lawbreakers in D.C. had their sphincters all puckered up. We watched Vladimir Putin hand the greatest president in my lifetime a soccer ball, the World Cup soccer ball. And that's a very special soccer ball. The World Cup has soccer balls these days that can contain computer chips. Like computer chips that may contain a lot of information that people don't necessarily want the public to find out about. One Vladimir Putin also had some choice words that were pretty epic. And as a personal little side note, if you were to tell me 8 years ago that I would be praising the leader of another country over the quote-unquote lawbreakers of my own country, I would have thought you were crazy. But that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video, because what he did was quite a brilliant move. But let's rewind for a second, because the foes and the hoes always think they're the smartest person in the room. And they think that their strategery is always just so brilliant. It's the same playbook over and over and over again. And, as predictable as they always are, they tried to pull a fast one before the greatest president in my lifetime went over there.
A grand jury in the District of Columbia today returned an indictment presented by the Special Counsel's Office. The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election.
Yes, Rod Rosenstein, the acting Attorney General during the first portion of the greatest president in my lifetime's term. Now, some of you may remember I mentioned him in the very first video that I did under the section labeled Who's Your Daddy?, where I briefly mentioned only 2 of the offspring from the Operation Paperclip Nazis that snuck into the United States and slowly infiltrated and took over the control panels of everything that governs our daily lives. And see, here again, I could go off into a side trail right now that would take hours. Did you know Rod Rosenstein had a sister? He sure does. Dr. Nancy Messonnier, or Messonnier. I have no idea how to pronounce her name. I don't give a crap. But it seems one Dr. Nancy Messonnier was in charge of the National Center for Immunizations and Respiratory Diseases at the CDC. Do you see a picture being formed? Dear old dad, one Heinrich Himmler, would be very proud. And again, I could go off and do an entire video about just the offspring from the Operation Paperclip Nazis. I highly encourage everyone to dig into that one. Now back to Helsinki in 2018. Do you see what Rod Rosenstein did right there? This was a feeble attempt to try and cast a dark cloud over the private meeting between the greatest president in my lifetime and Vladimir Putin. Because the hoes and the foes, they don't give 2 craps about what the real law of the land is. They gear everything around swaying the court of public opinion. And so here, he's tried to indict 13 Russian nationals. And you can indict anyone. Doesn't mean you have the charges or the goods to convict. But in the minds of the public, an indictment is a very, very negative thing. So his little move to do this was a precursor to what always seems to happen with the fake news media. They followed suit.
Why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Let's let Nasty Pig Losi explain exactly what's going on here.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Oh, goodness. Did I mispronounce her name? Anywho, if you've listened to any of my other videos, you've heard me say quite a few times, learn the rules of the game that nobody knew was being played, and you can see these people coming a mile away. But for men like the greatest president in my lifetime and Vladimir Putin, who, from what I understand, I don't know his IQ level, but I heard he's not shabby in the intelligence department, they can usually see these BS stunts 10 steps before they even happen. No! I'm going to editorialize this little part. President Putin was asked if he was going to extradite the Russian nationals that were indicted on charges of election interference. He starts out by very diplomatically letting them know that the charges that they're indicting these Russian nationals on are pretty much bullshit. But he suggested that they invoke a treaty from 1999, because President Putin, just like the greatest president in my lifetime, do things by the book. And so he invoked a treaty from 1999 that enables the Russian government to interrogate suspected criminals that have committed acts in another country. So in this instance, Russia would question these Russian nationals, and Russia also has the ability to request this of other countries. So he invoked this treaty, and this is my best understanding of it, guys. He invoked this treaty, but he took it a step further and said that the special counsel Robert Mueller could make a special request to be present during the interrogation. But then he very diplomatically reminded the press, this treaty works two ways.
There's another condition. This kind of effort should be a mutual one. Then we would expect that the Americans would reciprocate, and they would question officials, including the officers of law enforcement and intelligence services of the United States, whom we believe who have something to do with illegal actions on the territory of Russia. And we have to request the presence of our law enforcement. For instance, we can bring up Mr. Browder in this particular case. Business associates of Mr. Browder have earned over $1.5 billion in Russia. They never paid any taxes, neither in Russia nor in the United States. And yet the money escaped the country. They were transferred to the United States. They sent huge amount of money, $400 million, as a contribution to the campaign of Hillary Clinton. Well, that's their personal case. It might have been legal, the contribution itself, but the way the money was earned was illegal. So we have a solid reason to believe that some intelligence officers accompanied and guided these transactions. So we have an interest of questioning them. But we can.
Now, did y'all catch that epic response? Now, see, the press always tries to put people they're questioning on the defense, get them on their heels, right? But instead of resisting this question, he leaned right into it. He said, hey, these charges sound like they're BS, but we can question these nationals under this treaty, and I'll go you one better. Mr. Mueller, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, can be present when we question these nationals. But it goes both ways. There's a man named Bill Browder who's been running back and forth from the United States to Russia and back and forth and back and forth. And he's somehow accumulated billions of dollars, hasn't paid taxes in either country. And he was somehow able to donate $400 million to one 2016 loser candidate, a.k.a. the Hildebeest. $400 million, guys. Jeez. Furthermore, we have reason to believe that some of the agents within your intelligence agencies assisted in facilitating these transactions. So, we would like to be present when those people are questioned.
Checkmate, bitches.
Y'all clearly haven't caught on to the fact you're not going to win this one. You are way out of your league. But it sure is hilarious to watch you try.
Game over.
I'm going to sign off here in a second, but I wanted to say that I initially started presenting the details and facts that I came across that brought me to the conclusion the greatest president in my lifetime is the greatest president in all of our lifetimes. And the significance of his connection to Nikola Tesla is key. But there are also other key components of this bigger picture that I'm trying to share. And so it may sound like I'm trying to discuss politics. This has nothing to do with politics. And the greatest president in my lifetime is not a politician. But understanding the dynamics and the geopolitics of other countries in this world and its relationship to the United States of America is very, very important, because the inner mechanisms of all these different countries, they've been depicted as one thing to the American people. They've been presented in many instances as the opposite of what they actually are and what they actually stand for. And I know that my praising Vladimir Putin will probably piss some people off. Shoot, my oldest brother still does not want to recognize the fact that we've been duped. And I can't say that I blame him. He was a United States Marine, 100% disabled. So I understand, and I'm not trying to upset anyone, but I do want to present the facts in the way that I've come across them and the way that I understand them. Because this isn't about Russia versus the United States of America. It's not about Republicans against Democrats. It's not about Christians against Muslims or any of the sort. This is about soulful human beings who value family, who do not view children as a commodity, but a priceless gift, and who have the ability to care for and love one another. It's about those people versus a very diabolical element that entered not only into this country, but into the world in an attempt to conquer it. I stand by that statement 1,000%. And I understand the conflict happening with Russia and Ukraine. And the fake news media has clobbered everyone over the head with who it is we should be rooting for. So I'd like to say this to appeal to anyone who is interested in the survival of those soulful human beings. Before you support anything, please consider there are many soulful people living in the country of the Ukraine. There are many soulful people living in the country of Russia. Let's be on their side, not the diabolical element or the extensions of that diabolical element that wish to conquer and control everything. And in this particular case with Russia and the Ukraine, I know whose side Vladimir Putin is on. Does everyone know which side Zelensky's on? And before I begin to sound like I'm elevating Vladimir Putin above the greatest president in my lifetime, ain't never gonna happen, because that was an epic comeback, but nothing will ever beat this.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a
Please stay tuned, everybody. We haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Only aim to win, let the games begin. I was born for this, from day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit, ain't no stopping it. I was born for this, from day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit, ain't no stopping it. Ain't no stopping it, ain't no stopping it, ain't no stopping it. Let the games begin.